Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. Ukraine war doesn't fail to amaze us. Every week there is something new and a new twist to this entire game. And I have with me Major General Prabdeep Singh, who's going to as always, help us make some sense of what is happening in that country. Sir, good evening. Welcome to the show. And at a very solemn note, with your permission, sir, I'd like to just express my sorrow and deepest anguish for the five lives that have been lost of the Indian Army in a explosion which has happened in Jammu and Kashmir. Uh, may God bless their souls and their families so that they could get the strength and just know the fact that the entire country stands behind them. On that note, sir, as I said, good evening. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Uh, Thanks once again for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure. And the Ukraine, as you said, is by the day it's getting interesting, intriguing, keeping people wonder as to when the counter-offensive is going to come. And it has me wondering as to what is the scale of the counter-offensive. We've also had in this week a lot of visits coming in to Ukraine, visitors coming into Ukraine. You had the uh, Russian president going up and meeting his troops. You have the counterpart, the Ukrainian President Zelensky coming in and meeting the troops. Then you have the NATO chief coming in and all that. So it's basically, before a match, you have the coaches and the big guys who own the teams. They come and give a pep talk. Guys, you got to win. You got to play the match very well. And this kind of a shabashi or a pat in the back seems to be taking place. Each side wondering as to who's going to launch the counter-offensive, if I may just put it this way. So we've all heard counter-offensive, but the scale, the location, well, the location is kind of being talked about because there aren't much options as far as what they exist. And we'll discuss them as we go along. Then, of course, the supply of weapons, arms that is taking place. Uh, every day you hear of a new of a country stepping in to support the war in Ukraine, the Ukrainians in the war. And what amazes me is with the entire NATO forces and the NATO countries and the EU countries all backing Ukraine with the weaponry, with the monies, with everything. Russia continues to face them boldly with a lot of strength and conviction, still maintaining a large amount of troops up their sleeves. At the same time, a lot of misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, counter propaganda taking place. It's it's hard to at times uh, believe any story which is coming up on the social media because you have both sides claiming victories. So this is a battle of narratives and perceptions also which is taking place. But
Hmm.
the fact of the
Indeed.
ground remains that yes, Bakhmut is still holding on. Generally, at about I would say 80%, having taken over by the Russians, the Wagners as well as by the airborne troops which have come into play, and a large number of airstrikes and missile strikes which have taken place all over. So it's picking up momentum. Uh, I don't know whether you heard about it or not, but they say that yesterday, that is the 19th, the offensive is seemingly have begun.
There are rumors of that, yes, sir.
Yes. So if this is the scale of the counter-offensive, and we are just talking about, and the front that is shown are pinpricks which are taking place all across on the front. So this is what is happening right now. Yes, we can discuss as we go along.
Let's keep the counteroffensive with a little bit of a pin, because I guess that's all the information we have about that. So let's talk about Europe, which is the main game. It seems like Europe is tired of Ukraine, and there was a phrase that was brought out called Ukraine fatigue. That seems to be at play today, and let's just talk about an overall picture before we get into the grain deal, the French, the differences between the visits to China, Annalena Baerbock, and Macron, who were at totally different ends of the game. Let's see. I want to ask you before we get into the specifics. Overall, so do you see the European Union having a realization? Yeah, what have we got into?
Absolutely. A very good question. And I think this realization, or as you say, Ukraine fatigue, has kind of set in. And let's examine, and I would say, why not? The way things are going, at the end of it all, it is the common man. When the common man starts getting hurt, the fatigue starts setting in. Whatever the people in the whatever people in power, the games they may play, and whatever you know diplomatic overtures may take place, but the fact of the matter remains: the moment it starts hurting the stomach of the uh, common man, then the tables start turning. So overall, you see the amount of money which has gone in. You see the amount of weapons which have gone in, worth God knows how many billions, nearly touching about, I think, about 380 odd billion, which is, the amount which is collectively uh, having been poured in. Now, this kind of monies which could have been spent on the people have been spent
Mhm.
on a country. I may be, not exactly in the figures, but this kind of money in billions, which could have been spent for, or is the taxpayers' money, if you might put it, has been spent on a country which is not even a NATO nation, which is not, which is not a part of the EU too. So you spend so much of money on a third country, and you've not done that on your own people. Well, obviously the people are going to be kind of uh, upset. The next thing
Hmm.
is the amount of refugees which have poured in. Hundreds of thousands of people who poured in into all these neighboring countries. And trust me, those families are not going to go back to Ukraine. Uh, by the end of the war, they would have been settled somewhere in some refugee camp or found some jobs for themselves, and they'd be more comfortable in the rest of Europe. And maybe they've been forced to realize their dream. They all dreamt of being in the western part of
Yeah,
Europe, and today they've been forced to realize their dream. Not a good thing to say so, but that seems to have happened. And if
probability, yes, sir.
and if we think that these families are going to go back after all the hardship and after all the destruction which has taken place, I think that's not happening. So this is a burden against on you again on Europe. Then comes the oil, the energy crisis, which has taken place. Energy prices going up, oil prices going up, the gas prices going up, not non-availability. All that of course is also hurting. So
Hmm.
overall, the entire economic situation of Europe is in doldrums. The United States, we know what is happening in the United States. Uh, so the tables are turning as far as the domestic politics are concerned, and soon many of these uh, politicians will be under pressure. We While we're not discussing the grain deal, but the fact is that what is happening on the grains front, four
No,
countries of
let's get
yeah,
into it, sir.
Yeah, four countries have already decided, said that thank you very much, we don't want anything from Ukraine. And it's just not wheat or corn or whatever, it's everything and anything. They do not want anything coming out of Ukraine into their markets because it's whatever is coming in from there is so cheap that their own local economy is getting affected. So the farmers, the traders, they're up against arms, and obviously these are political compulsions. And countries with sane voices at the top have said, "Sorry, we are not. All this is not welcome." So this
Yeah.
is setting in a divide already within Europe. This is a major fact. I mean, you have Hungary, which outrightly said sorry. Poland, which is again Poland,
Poland,
Poland of
Romania.
all, yes, Romania, Bulgaria. I mean, immediate neighbor Poland says, and is supposed to be the most, the biggest supporter of the war, has said no
MiG
to the claims.
29s.
Yes, has said no to all that, and whatever the EU policy is, that needs to get refined. I mean, they are fighting for it. If we had the farmers' agitation in India, the world was all up against in arms. I think this is a bigger crisis.
Huge.
It's a huge crisis which is taking place all across Europe. So Europe is definitely in doldrums, and the side effects are also being felt in the United States, and the side effects are huge. So this may be a very a difficult pill to swallow at the end of it all.
The so the interesting and the important thing that you actually mentioned right now is that the grain deal. I want to talk about the response that was given by the European Commission. To me, that is very insightful because it actually gave a sort of a slap to the countries and said you are against the
Yeah,
policies of the European Union. So these countries are expected to sacrifice their own people's ambitions for a unity, a perceived unity at the European Union.
so the point that you just made, it amounts to a divide which is already being kind of something like this has been taken as an opposition or an something not adhering to the EU code, if I may just put it. So this kind of dissonance has already started, and this is going to spill over to the other countries as well. And the moment this happens, uh, trust me, the European Union may not be holding on for too long the way things are going this way. So the moment
Oops.
there's a split, there's a moment there's a split in the EU in the thought, and in the end of it all, it's economy, as we have always said. It's all economics. It's all paisa. It's all money. Whether it's the taxpayers' money, whether it's the individual's money, whether it's the country's money. But the fact of the matter is, it hurts, and nobody is willing to sacrifice much above their, budget or whatever they think they can afford. So EU is definitely in trouble.
Which
NATO's
is which is what brings me to the next question. So you had this visit of President Macron going to China, and the rumor has it that he's working at the back end with the Chinese to kind of come up with some sort of a plan for a ceasefire or something like that. On the After 2 days, you've got Annalena Baerbock, the firebrand, German foreign minister, who is more Ukrainian than Ukrainian themselves. I like the girl, but she's got something loose up there. That's all I will say. She goes to China and she literally has uh, not a shouting match, but a decent argument with the foreign ministry spokesperson during the press conference, talking about territorial integrity, talking about Ukraine, talking about, it was a pushback. That told us two separate ways of approaching China.
You see, that's one. One is a mature, One is a mature way of looking at it. The other one is that immaturity which comes into play with lack of experience. I would put it this way: you do not deal with the Chinese like this. Uh, the Chinese are known to be what are known to be cunning. At the same time, very very protective about their own identity and about their own ambitions. So you do not approach China like that. They are very blunt. I've heard them, and I must appreciate them for what their candidness is. They're extremely blunt in what they put across, and they don't mince the words. So perhaps that is what would have agitated the German foreign minister. There was a very interesting something which came about, that the French president was received with all the ceremony and all that, and the foreign minister from Germany, she was received by a secretary from the government. Well, that's what it is. That's how protocol works. So, as far as they are concerned, the protocol part of it is always it applies.
Yeah.
So they are very correct in their approach. And as far as the French president is concerned, in talking behind and working towards a peace deal, he is working for a peace deal for his own survival. I hope I made my point. He is working for his own survival, because the people are up against there is the French people themselves are up against arms. The Germans, the Germans are up against arms. The locals, they want peace. They don't want to be they don't want anything to do with NATO. So when such kind of protests are taking place in your own countries, obviously you want peace and you want to rush to China and say, "Big brother, do something about it." And otherwise, my situation is untenable. I may be just removed. So please help me out. These kind of desperate situations are taking place. The Chinese will act. They will want to broker peace, because I heard the latest is they want to broker peace between Israel and Palestine, and after having done that successfully between Iran and Saudi Arabia, they want to broker a peace between Israel and Palestine. So this is what they want to stage, is that we have arrived on the stage, on the world arena. United States, thank you very much. We are the ones taking over. And if people are going to run and ask them, I think it's only a boost to their ego.
Biggest
Whether they can
mistakes.
actually do it. Actually, the China can do it or not, we'll have to see. And I have my doubts.
Those are the biggest mistakes that Europe is making again with the policy of appeasement. I was actually thinking about that when you were kind of describing the situation. It's another policy of appeasement,
It is appeasement. The
and to the
entire of
wrong guy,
Europe,
appeasing the wrong
the
guy.
entire of Europe depends on China for its products. China is very much interested in the market, European market. I've always said that. It's interested in putting down the United States to, you know, at all costs. So they are only interested in, again, it's
Money.
all financials, economics, paisa.
So, since we are on China, so let me ask you a sideline question, although not in the central periphery of this discussion, but I'll still ask you: why hasn't China supplied any arms to Russia, or has it? Sir?
No, it doesn't need to. I will ask you this way: does it need? Has Russia asked?
Doesn't look like
No.
it.
No, they talk of some some Chinese components found in Russian equipment. So bloody hell, hasn't the United States, if you fire something which is made in the US, how many Chinese components are there in that?
May I remind of the alloy that was found in the F-35 fighter?
So what I'm trying to say, rare earth minerals, then you have whatever. I mean, endless amount of stuff which goes from China, maybe not directly to the United States defense industry directly, but through their contractors, the suppliers. Where are the suppliers sourcing the material from? After all, it's all from coming from quite a bit of it is percentage of it is coming from China. So to say that some components were found in the Russian equipment is again stupid. And the Russians haven't sought any arms and equipment from China. It still feels that it is superior. Let's take the example of hypersonics. I mean, they've executed and shown to you. The Chinese are still testing it. The Americans have failed as far as hypersonic weapons are concerned. So whose technology is better? The Russian technology, isn't it? MiG 29s are whose? I mean, what these guys are supplying to Ukraine, who supplied them in the first place? So, Russian technology is superior, it is sturdy, it can withstand greater amount of, uh, I would say, withstand a lot of uh, battering. Hasn't India bought all this equipment from Russia? Why? Because it's sturdy. We know what it means to have Russian equipment. You know that it's not going to fail you so easy. It may be heavy, it may be ugly, but it's not going to fail you so easy. So Russians don't need Chinese help. Maybe it's the other way around. The Chinese would need Russian help subsequently. So this
Isn't
kind of
that why the isn't that why the Chinese defense minister is in Russia right now?
yeah, you see, the defense ministers will uh, the Russians that way are I would say they're also cunning people. Haven't you heard of Russian mafia? Anyway, I'm not making any derogatory remark on anybody, but what I'm trying to say is that they know exactly what they have to do. The Chinese are also the same. Now, what is happening is once there is a meeting at the higher levels, this is routine protocol. This is a routine way of functioning. When two countries decide to be closer to each other, it starts by the heads of states meeting. Then subsequently there are meetings at various levels, at the subordinate levels. So this is axiomatic that after your heads of states are met, if you have to have certain follow-up actions, you have to meet. So this is what is happening.
And the Russians are also pretty great, huh? The first thing they make him do is get an audience with Putin.
Yeah, that
And,
no, that is natural. That is natural. Look,
yeah,
these are
some
protocol.
yeah.
Let's take India as well. If you have a foreign minister of a country or a defense minister of a country visiting India, the first thing what you'll expect him to do is to meet the prime minister, have a cup of tea, and then you know before he sits for talks at his level. So these are nothing to get amazed or to talk about. These are basic protocols which take place. So
Helps the narrative though, at least in any case. Sir, let's get to the. Sorry, you were saying, sir.
no, 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 it's okay.
Let's get to the battlefront, sir. Bakhmut, of course, is a grinding match which is happening continuously. You mentioned that there is a rumor that the Ukrainians have already started a counter-offensive. Uh, that is something I'm hearing as well, and it seems that they've taken a pocket here, there, somewhere in Bakhmut. You know, something small. What could be their plan for an army, sir? Is this going to be a narrative battle again, where they will basically get these TikTok soldiers to go and do what they did the last time, or is do you actually expect the Russians to say, okay, we can streamline right now, let these guys come in, doesn't really matter to us, thoda sa readjust the lines? Do you see something like that happening, sir?
So you see, before Uh, Now let's see as to how operations would be launched, right? I think it's a little too early for anybody to say that the counteroffensive is started, because in the true spirit, these are preliminary actions.
Hmm. Probing,
Before
probably.
the probing actions, these are to find out as to what the weak spots are. So you have these forces which are all across on a greater front. You have these probing actions taking place. Now, in any of the probing actions, if a headway is made, that is welcome, and that whatever little, pinprick, that is then further expanded, right? So this is what, if an offensive has been launched, to say all across the front you'll have small pockets, small forces trying to probe, which is where all they are, where they aren't there, because there will be some weak spots in which they can be exploited. So this is perhaps what is, if somebody is saying that it has been launched, this may be well be the probing actions. Now, my point is, uh, their army is not ready as of now, as per the reports. These 9 brigades that they are training, uh, the Britishers are training, the Germans are training, Poland also has some hand in it. So whatever training is taking place of these 9 brigades, which are being constituted especially for this offensive, well, these guys are not ready as yet, and they are not in the scene. Second is, the entire lot of equipment that they have demanded is trickling in.
Yeah.
It hasn't yet come in fully. Now, how do you look at this? When you say trickling in, are they coming in straight into the battlefront? That's
No.
not what happens. There's not going to be, if you have to launch a counter-offensive, you are not going to apply them piecemeal. By piecemeal, I'm saying, 3 tanks here and 4 tanks there. That's not going to happen. So if they are going to apply those, supposedly the 200 tanks which are going to be mustered up, and the, you know 600-700, the armored AFVs, uh, which ICVs which are going to be mustered up, if they are to be applied, they have to be applied in a very systematic manner. Now, if I am the defender, in this case, let's take it. Russia knows the counteroffensive is coming. We know generally as to what their aim of the counteroffensive would be: to take back portions of Donbas region, take back, you know, Bakhmut, because it's an ego issue, or go down south to Melitopol and try and take the land bridge and cut off the Russians into two. So if we know as to this is the game plan. If we sitting in India know what the game plan is, you mean to say the Russians don't know as to what the game plan is, right? And we are talking off media. Those guys sitting in Russia with all the ISR resources under command, they would know exactly as to what is happening. So would the Ukrainians know as to where the defender is, because there is so much of battlefield transparency today because of all these ISR means which are available to everybody, and the United States is supplying the best of intelligence to the Ukrainians.
Hmm.
So the Russians have their own means, and Russians would have, tied up along with the Chinese also as far as the intelligence part is concerned. So you have the Russian satellites and the Chinese satellites and all that, providing most accurate information as to where the Ukrainians are, and here you would have the Americans giving all the information to the Ukrainians. So there is total battlefield transparency, which is not available to INU. We are going off what is, a general understanding put across by the media and various sources, right? I If I were the one who were to lead the operation, I have to put my forces across the river From the western side to the eastern side, I have to move them across the river. How do I move them across the river? They have to come over bridges. Understandable? In the military parlance, these are choke points. And
Absolutely.
if I'm the defender, I'm watching all these choke points. 24/7, I'm watching all these. I know exactly as to what is coming across this. I know exactly as to where where these people are concentrating. You see, it's not, you know exactly where the concentration of troops is taking place. You know exactly who's crossing from where they are crossing. So what will I do? I will target those with my air, with my long range artillery, with my missiles. All these choke points will get targeted. All the concentration areas which are there, they will be targeted. So I see nothing of that sort happening right now. You understand? So when that is not happening, that means no such concentration is taking place, no such crossing is taking place. Or even if a crossing is taking place, it is one tank trickling. It may be through trickle method. There is a way of pushing out things across also through the trickle method. One tank in a day, by night 2 3 tanks, but then still everything gets caught. The point I'm trying to make here is that nothing is uh, being hidden. There is no surprise element in this. So when there is no surprise element in the counter offensive, there is no surprise element as far as the defense line is concerned. So both sides are generally aware as to what is happening. So when the war
Hmm.
breaks out, they would know precisely as to where to go, and these people will know precisely where they're coming, and that is where the cat and mouse game takes place. That is where the brain or the strategy behind the operation takes place. So, in my opinion, as of now, just probing. Nothing is there at the rear. Nothing is there across the river. And the moment they start crossing, trust me, they'll be taken on. The moment they start concentrating, they'll be taken on by whatever means.
You've given me a very scary thought, sir. I mean, if I'm Ukraine, I get my troops across, my weaponry across the river, and I blow the bridges up. If
That's it.
the Russians just blow the bridges up, you're stuck.
That's it. I heard a very interesting thing. I don't know whether you heard this or not. There was somebody who just came up and said that the dams on the river Dnieper, on the dams on the river, the sluices have been closed,
Hmm.
and the water is level is already rising. In some places, the water spilled the banks. So the logic that this gentleman was giving was that the water will be let loose at a time when, if and when the Russians come to the river line. It didn't make sense to me uh, in the present scenario, but that is one tactic which is actually applied. Uh, but it is applied by the defender and not by the attacker. So the logic this gentleman was giving was from the offender's point of view, which did not really make sense. From so from the Ukrainian point of view, it did not make sense. From the Russian point of view, it definitely made sense because if you are defending, supposing you're defending a line and you want the tanks to get bogged down, you have to release a lot of water so that the area becomes boggy and the tanks cannot come. This this is an accepted tactics, right? So if the bridges get blown up and these guys on this side, and the dams are also taken on. Thank you very much, Ukraine. Is all I can say.
So, but one major factor that I fail to see the West not applying this into their plans, and whatever little I could understand of those leaked papers, whatever they are. Again, no mention of terrain. They're not talking about the black soil of Ukraine. They're not talking about the sludgy, terrible circumstances that are there right now.
Yeah, that's why they say, it will not take place now. It will take place in the month of May or towards the end of May
Well,
when they when the ground dries up, and it'll get delayed. They are not equipped. It will take time. It only partial grains will be made. So these kind of things have been made clear, and maybe they are factored in, but not brought out so clearly. Is all I can say.
it's quite funny. Even I mean, May months are known for some amount of rainfall, also some amount of summer rainfall, which is the
No,
changing
here,
season.
yeah, but here what they're looking at is the thawing of the snow is what creates those boggy conditions. There is snow, and then when the temperature rise, the entire thing starts thawing. And that's where it becomes boggy. And thawing takes place over a period of time. I mean, because of the kind of winters that they go through, and maybe the rainfall is not so severe as those areas. If I may just put it, then the ground gets hard.
Which brings me to my last question. And guys, after this, it is time for your questions and your comments and your thoughts with regards to this thing. The main factor is that whatever happens, let's say this counteroffensive happens, and it is a well-known fact that they'll not achieve much. It'll probably, yeah, here and there, but then of course it's not going to be that the Russians are holding their heads and running back to Russia. It's not going to happen. Uh, Even if they're able to make some gains, it's going to be very temporary. And in these kind of long, drawn out wars, these movements and the shifts of line are pretty common. What will Ukraine achieve by, I mean, in no simple words, banging his head against the wall? Why is he doing this counteroffensive?
This is again an effect of the two. This is like that, the boxing match. You have a stubborn fellow, might and he just wants to fight, and that's about it. Because there's somebody cheering him up, he gets up again, and he fights. He stumbles, he gets up again, and this is what is happening. What are you going to gain out of it? Uh, Nothing actually. You see, if if you're looking at a decisive battle or a decisive counter-offensive, which is want to actually put the Russians, throw out the Russians out of Ukraine. If you have that kind of might, uh, I would love to see that kind of battle taking place. Whether they can do it in a month's time or 2 months' time or a year's time. If they can do it, I would really salute these soldiers. I already salute these soldiers for the tough fight that they're giving. But what I'm saying is that as a nation, if they can throw out the Russians out of their country and have the Russians on the knees, I that would be an ideal condition. That's not going to happen. The thing is, it's not going to happen. And when it is not going to happen, the sooner they realize, the better it is. Because at the end of it all, it's all about uh, lives also. Ukrainian lives also matter. And I think that is the slogan that should be going across entire Europe. Ukrainian lives matter too. Somehow they've been all put on the sacrifice. They're put on the block, and then they're being sorted out. But the other thing is, where will Russia stop? You see, if the counteroffensive is not going to go through, it makes very minimum gains. After all, if you ask me very frankly, over a front which is about 1600 odd kilometers at the moment, uh, 200 tanks overall, few RT pieces, artillery pieces, armored fighting vehicles. Well, how deep can you go in? Every battle that you'll fight, every block, and here it is all, urban territory. Every block and every village that you will fight for
Exactly.
will take you weeks and months to clear. But to do that, do you have that kind of force? I'm afraid they don't have that. So the sooner they realize that their own lives matter, they got to put their ego aside, call for a ceasefire, talk, negotiate, and end the war. And I think that's the only way out. But unfortunately, the West does not want them to stop the war, and the president is, uh, he's all gung ho, and he's getting all the kudos and all the shabashis and the pats on the back. We are there for you types. He's not realizing as to what he's doing. And trust me, you launch a counter-offensive in one area, and I'm the defender. I'm not stupid. I'm your opposing, not the defender. I'm the opposing party. I'm not stupid. I will launch another one on the other side, somewhere else, won't I? I'll hold you. Now, this is normal tactics. Normal tactics. You're coming in for a counter attack. I'll hold you with a minimum force required to hold you, and I'll take my major force from the other side and get behind your back.
Isn't that what we did in 65?
So that's normal tactics. And here, in my opinion, what will he do? He'll go and take on Odessa and say thank you again.
ग्रीन डील रखो अपने पास.
हाँ, तुम रखो अपना ग्रेन डील, तुम रखो अपना, क्या बोलते हैं, you can keep doing this counter offensive. I'm going there. When the world's attention is towards this counter offensive, he's launching his
He
own.
opens another.
Yeah, so he'll open another front, and then you will go scurrying back and trying to defend yourself.
Bloody hell.
So that's what, if I had to do it, I would do it that way, right?
What if
And
he comes down to Kiev from the north, from Belarus?
or he comes up to Kiev. So, for all you know, you have to, comes in from Belarus, yeah. Who's stopping at that particular time? So,
Absolutely.
so these kind Russians are not stupid, and let the world not believe that because they came in and they suffered a lot of casualties in the initial days, that they're as stupid as they are, as they portrayed themselves to be, or they were portrayed to be, not themselves, but they were portrayed to be. So, if so, I've given to options. You come toward this Melitopol, and I will go to Kiev, and I will go to Odessa, and thank you, and I will take you on. You try and take Crimea. I'm so sorry, you're not going to reach there because I've got a force. As it is, the defense line has been made.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and all these defenses, just for everybody's understanding, when you make defenses, it is just not this line of trenches. Ahead of the line of trenches are barbed wires. Ahead of the barbed wires are the minefields. Okay, and the minefields will contain anti-tank mines and anti-personnel mines. And all these obstacle lines are covered with fire. When you say covered with fire, means there's artillery at the back, which is available to fire anybody who's trying to cross the minefield at a particular area. So all the obstacle systems are covered with fire. There are artillery which is dedicated for this purpose. So it's not easy to go through this. Tanks may go through. What about the without the tanks? With just the tanks cannot, capture anything. It's very, very interesting and intricate. You'll say the ICVs will follow tanks, but the width of a tank and breadth of an ICV is different, and they can't just randomly cross because there are mines there.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this is something which one has to train for and one has to understand.
I must say, so that was an eye opener. That last answer, I think it would have cleared up a lot of things for a lot of the viewers. It did something for me. Uh, I know I said the last question, but I'm going to still push my luck. Just a thing, I was listening to some CIA, ex CIA chaps about this Pentagon leak. Uh, they said that we don't care about the operational documents. That boy that was caught was from an intelligence unit, so he might just have access to all that. Okay, understandable. They were more bothered about the CIA marked documents in that. They asked a question: how did he get that? Because CIA documents don't leave CIA Langley, Virginia. This chap is working in Boston or wherever he was. How did that happen? And that's something which is being spoken about quite hard in the US amongst the anti-war circles, if I may. What would you say to that? So those guys are pointing fingers at somebody very high up in the food chain.
You know what happens, Adi, is that these leaks, firstly, as far as the counteroffensive or whatever the state of preparedness we discussed this last time, there is nothing which is new which is found in that, right? As far as the status of Ukrainian army as to where the counteroffensive and how
Absolutely.
far can they go. Now, we did discuss this last time. These are, I think this is just a very deliberate leak. And as you said, CIA papers are not found. So just to make it authentic, some bits and pieces have been gathered together, some information has been gathered together and put across and leaked deliberately. You identify a guy who's into all this, or who's got interest in gaming, shaming, and all, who's got a network and who's enthusiastic, who's young, who doesn't understand, and you give him this kind of, you know, uh, documents to handle. He gets excited. I'm handling such fancy documents, and I'm so important. And what does he do? He wants to show off, and he's done that showing off. But the very fact that a 21-year-old is handling that, I find it very amusing. One, two, to be handled by a person who's from the National Guard is even more
Weekend
amusing.
warriors.
Is even more amusing. I mean, a 21-year-old is not interested with secret documents and top sec documents to handle. I mean, which year did he get enrolled? If he's 21 and he's National Guard, he ain't even regular. He's not a regular int operative. And you give him all this? I'm so sorry, it doesn't happen in any sane country. And then that too in the United States, who are very, very security conscious.
That's a
Trust,
loaded comment.
trust me, they are very, very security conscious, and their levels of security and protocol, as far as security protocol is concerned, is very, very high. So this to me seems to be a very deliberate leak, just to tell the world, we told you so. It's not going to work out. This Ukrainian war is not working out. We have put it across to you. You know the truth now. It's time to step out of it. I think it's a big way of making an excuse to get out. No other thing. Nothing
Similar
else.
thing happened in Vietnam as well. If you remember the main Pentagon leaks.
Yeah. So. these things are deliberate at times, to sway the public opinion, to sway the public mood, to shape the environment. Such actions would be taken and are taken perhaps. And obviously, it is masterminded and orchestrated with the connivance of the highest at the highest level. So this is what happens. 21-year-old, come on, man, give me a break. National Guard, give me a break. Somebody who comes once a week to train and you give him all this.
This like our territorial army guys are handling our,
Yeah, you tell
int.
you tell my THR, we don't even let them anywhere near, nowhere near. Yeah, we do. I mean, until unless he was a cyber expert or something like that, you picked up these gaming kids. The US does have all these the gaming kids. They are the ones who are good at games. They are the ones uh, who know how to handle joysticks. They are the ones who are handling all their drones.
Drones.
Yeah, so they're very good at it. Old people, 30s, 35, 36, that generation did not, or my generation, we are not
Yeah, savvy
drone
on that.
savvy or tech savvy or game savvy as these gamers of today. So these gamers have been employed by the United States for firing these missiles and drones in Afghanistan as well. So until unless he's a part of that, uh, perhaps, but definitely not documents.
Printed documents.
Yeah, yeah. This is like, and they'll all be original. I'm not saying they're unoriginal or they're fake or anything. As we mentioned earlier last time, so what if they're spying on any other country?
Everybody does that.
Routine. You keep a watch on activities of all countries. Your best of friends, you keep a watch on what's happening, what's the developments taking place, what is their mood, what is the inclination. You study heads of states, you study the chiefs. Everything is done. Yeah,
Let's get into some Sawal Jawab, sir.
yeah, sure,
Guys,
definitely.
before I do, let's please all like the video. There are certain insights with regards to the counter-offensive that Sir gave today. Trust me, that highlight of the show, that's something that all of us must watch and understand, because that's the reality. See, that we can analyze here and there, but the military analysis of it can only come through a military mind. And thank you, sir, for that. That was a very, very insightful
You're
section.
welcome.
Ishan, thank you so much for your contribution. He says, Jayan sir, do the NATO nations not understand the economic and foreign policy that they have put their own population through is the polar opposite of what is required to maintain a stable and strong nation state?
Absolutely. Now, this is where the Americans have let the NATO up a gum tree, is what I may just put it. And NATO without the United States support does not exist. The only two countries outside the European continent, that is Canada and the US. The rest all European nations in NATO. And from the very beginning, I've said, and I continue to maintain, it is the Americans who were losing hold on the Europe. NATO was being ignored. NATO was being pushed out of the scenario, and Ukraine has been caused because of all that. And the NATO countries today have got caught in this entire game. And as you know, that today they are all realizing that they've been fooled, that this is having a lot of effect on their economy and on the health of their own countries. So that is where these, revolts, these protests, uh, the grain part of it, not agreeing to imports of grain and food supplies from Ukraine, all that is happening because of that. The realization is setting in, and sooner or later you'll find they themselves crying out to stop this war. Yeah.
John, our friend, has a very interesting comment which says one test for the Bakhmut as a trap theory is there won't be in a Ukrainian counteroffensive. Ukraine would have lost too many to launch one.
Yes. Now the Ukrainians, as you say, have already lost a lot of troops, and Bakhmut has been the meat grinding machine in which they have got ground. So, what kind of a counter-offensive you just discussed? Counter-offensives are very, very. I don't know what kind of a counter-offensive are people visualizing. These are not games that you play on on video screens. These have actually to be executed on ground, and for execution on ground, all the force that they have. I read somewhere that the average experience of a Ukrainian soldier is 7 months, 7 to 10 months. Now, a
And
soldier
people are
who's,
crying about Agniveer, sir.
and we're crying about Agniveer. we say
Sorry,
that
just
4 years.
joking.
I don't believe in the Agniveers, and I believe and I firmly oppose it that 4 years is not good enough for time to train a soldier. To make a soldier out of a man, it takes much more, you know. So, and these guys have got 7 to 10 months of experience. Our recruit, when we recruit a soldier, we train him for 10 months. Train him for 10 months. And these guys have experience of only 10 months. They've just been picked up from these streets or they volunteered and they've got that much of experience. Well, one thing good about us, the motivation levels are extremely high, and my
Hmm.
compliments to that. And I think anybody who's seeing his own country being erased from the map, uh, and who has nothing to look forward to because his house has been destroyed, his family has been displaced, he will fight a tooth and nail battle, and that's the only plus point that they have. While they may have good uh, weaponry coming in, but that is not good enough alone. It's not only the man; it's behind the machine. It's also the machine which matters, and how you use it. Yeah.
Ishan, once again, thank you so much. So, certain Western powers are emptying their own coffers trying to keep Ukraine armed. We are in an advanced state of an FTA with Russia. In my humble opinion, this should be a lesson in diplomacy to the statementship to the West.
Yeah. Now, we're not discussing India and India's diplomacy. Uh, it's all about strategic autonomy as far as India is concerned. It's all about our relevance in the world, and what suits us is what we will do. And this FTA, etc., is what we were negotiating with the United Kingdom. That also we put on hold apparently. So we have these trade agreements which are going along on all various fronts. It's not with Russia alone. Primarily, it is to meet our own interests. So when you have these kind of agreements, yes, the whole world must look is looking up at us. It's not that the world is not looking up at us. Today, nobody, you remember the amount of criticism India was getting for not having voted and remained
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
neutral, abstaining, and all that.
Hmm.
Tell me one country today which is talking anti-India. You will not hear a single statement. I haven't heard one for the last, God knows, 6 months, 7 months.
Yeah, the Russian oil thing is
As
out of
to
the
why,
vogue. It's out of vogue now.
yeah, it's out of vogue. Everybody knows, yes, India's played smart. So today, nobody is complaining against India or not bitching against India, if I may just put it. Everybody is appreciating India for the stance that India took. And hats off to our people at the top. And we should all be very thankful to the fact that we are born in this great country.
Absolutely, sir. कोई शक नहीं है. Sir, Venki Saab, who's not able to type the question, he's saying, is China supplying materials to Ukraine via the Pakistanis?
China to Ukraine, far fetched. Uh, Pakistan and Ukraine, we've discussed this earlier also. Pakistan and Ukraine have had a lot of defense cooperation in the past. And Pakistan, as it is, the economy is in doldrums. It's rock bottom. So that is how they have been. They are kind of trying to make money with whichever way they can make. So they have sold them a lot of ammunition, which is produced in their own factories. Pakistan, incidentally, is an exporter of ammunition, and its ordnance factories are known for it. They've supplied a good amount of ammunition all over the world, and so they've supplied 122 mortar ammunition to Ukraine. And there was some news to say that they're selling back the tanks, TATUDs, which they had got from there.
44 of them, yes, sir.
Yeah. So all that 44, that would mean one regiment worth. So these kind of things are happening. But if you say Chinese, I do not think so. Pakistan maybe Pakistan can do anything. So they may be conniving against the Chinese and selling the Chinese equipment to Ukraine without Chinese knowledge. That could happen. But and even if it goes, China doesn't care a damn. It doesn't belong to China at the moment. It belongs to Pakistan.
Tejas asks, I can't believe how gullible Europeans can be. Ukraine is at war, no NATO yet. Finland gets it without a hitch, but EU people still see Russia as the villain. They don't see NATO's plan.
Yeah, I'm glad, Tejas, you realize that how gullible the Europeans are. They don't have brains, and if trust me, your question is so valid, and we've discussed this today. I and Adi have discussed this earlier before we started. I have a very simple question to ask to the entire NATO countries or to the even to the Secretary General of NATO. If Ukraine has sacrificed so much, if Ukraine, you are pumping in billions and billions of dollars worth ammunition and equipment, the wherewithal to NATO, why is it that NATO, Ukraine is not in NATO? Simple question. I mean, we discussed this earlier. Ideally, the first thing that should have happened is, buddy, we are supporting you. Now you're part of NATO. So they are not so gullible also at the same time. Finland is not at war with Russia, so Finland is welcome. Ukraine is at war with Russia, so it is not welcome. Why it is not welcome is because if it was a part of NATO, they would have to contribute troops to it. They don't want to contribute troops. They don't want to lose lives. And they have really no commitment towards that Article 5. When has it ever been invoked? It has not been invoked till date.
Never. They've
So,
gone to war twice on Article 4, not on 5.
yeah, here is a case of a country which you were wanting to rope in into NATO and have not been able to, and now are unwilling to rope in because that's the red line. They know it is the red line for Russia, and they know that if they get it into NATO, they will have to provide troops. So, unfortunately, the Europeans are seemingly extremely gullible, and it is pure anti-Russian mentality. That's it, and it's the Cold War 2, 2.0. I mean, we ended the Cold War, or the world ended the Cold War, and today you have revived it to a extent that there is no going back. That is what has happened, and ramifications will be felt later. Ramifications will be felt, uh, when Taiwan, happens in Taiwan. Ramifications will be seen later when the Arctic circle comes into play, the northern sea route comes into play. So all these things are going to have an effect subsequently.
Eh, Very interesting. I think, there is a comment from, oh, Venki Saab is here. Thank you so much for joining in, sir. And thanks for your contribution. He says, as per the West, Hungary's blocking of Sweden's NATO bid is puzzling and irritating. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Hungary seems to be the
Flavor of the season. Sorry.
flavor of the season, and having a mind of its own.
Yeah.
And I really cannot comment as to what is the why Hungary is opposed to Sweden. But what I see is that uh, the moment Sweden comes into the NATO bid, the effect which will take place on the north, on the Arctic side, that will have an effect. I'm not very clear, and I would not want to comment beyond this. It is indeed puzzling.
Well, sir, I mean, to me, Hungary had said something very clearly in the beginning. They had said, you all have ports. I don't. I will still buy Russian oil, and that's just about it. And he got up and went to Moscow and met Putin.
No, Hungary is that way. What you just said, Hungary is very, very clear on this.
Yeah.
They're looking at their own people. Hungary is a poor nation, amongst this entire lot. Among the Nordic countries or the East European countries, Hungary is a poorer nation comparatively. So he's very much worried about his own people, and that is why he's taken this stand. He says, "I don't. I want Russian oil. Who are you to stop me?" So this is what it is,
Hmm.
and what it
But
has.
Sweden is really funny, sir. Why does Sweden want to get into all this stuff is something,
And
it's
the
insane.
Swedes, the all these Nordic countries are staying away. Sweden was staying away, Finland was staying away, and be- because of the neutrality, because they were not non-NATO, they had strengthened their armed forces to a degree that they could defend themselves.
Now they'll have to buy American weapons.
Now they will be compelled. The Finns are already training with them, and but the moot point here is what are the differences between Hungary and Sweden?
Sir,
That is something which the question is talking about. And trust me, even if Sweden becomes a NATO member, how does it affect Hungary? It should not.
Turkey, yeah, but
Yeah, Turkey is a different story. Turkey is already there. But why are we talking about Sweden? Good question. Sorry, won't give you a correct answer.
are the Five Eyes playing an important role in Ukraine or is it just Kuril service?
No, no, they're very much playing a part in Ukraine. They have their all their eyes are on Ukraine. The intelligence community is together and providing all the intelligence there. So it is not squirrel service. It's very much there, and the entire of intelligence is being provided by them. Yeah.
I mean, this is a very interesting question because how is the entire network being set up between, I mean, as we'd like to call them, the Anglo-Saxon powers
No, no, no.
to,
This network is existing. You see
yeah,
this the Five Eyes thing.
focus towards this particular battle.
Yes, because that is the flavor of the season.
Yeah,
So they are all focused towards it. They they
absolutely.
they work as it is. They work in great sync, and they are doing that.
I'm going to take two more questions, sir. This is a short but a very interesting question. He says, even after Ukraine loses the war, will the expansion actually stop?
Yeah, that's the major worry, and I think that's what Finland is worried about, and that's what Moldova is worried about. So,
Expansion, if you look at it from the European angle, it will be Russian expansion.
no, he's
If you look
talking.
at it
I'm
from the
talking
Russian
about
angle,
I'm talking about the Russian expansion.
hmm,
I, as you're looking at NATO expansion, NATO expansion is what? Only Finland is there. That's about it. Which is bordering in Russia. That's about it. So once Finland as it is there, now they've got a complete run right across all along. You have these small other nations, Lithuania and all that. They're already part of NATO in between. And if Ukraine comes as a fold in NATO, then NATO is expanded. If Ukraine has lost the war and there is a buffer zone created, uh, then yes, because if the war stops in the current lines also or along the river line, the Russians will only stop when they say that you will not become a part of whatever is the balance will not be a part of NATO.
so I have a breaking news coming in, sir. Uh, your place is in NATO. NATO chief tells Ukraine on first wartime visit to Kiev.
Yeah, I saw that.
First time this monkey has gone there. And he says, and I quote, sir, Ukraine's rightful place is in NATO, the Secretary General said, and over time, our support will help you make this possible.
He said
Over
that.
time.
Yeah, and he said that, and the American president said he added a phrase when he said you will be part of NATO, including Ukraine as a part of NATO in the long term is possible. That's the statement. In the long term, we're not talking short term. We're not talking now. So these are only words of encouragement, but nothing on ground is going to happen.
Nothing on ground, sir.
So the NATO expansion, yeah, they get in Finland and then try and go, whatever is the buffer zone created, they try and get in that. So NATO may expand up to that limit when it comes. And they've also, asked for India to. You saw that carrot that they're showing that India could also be a part of NATO.
NATO.
Yeah,
काम नहीं बचा हमको वहां जाके खड़े हो जाओ
वहां जाके तुम
open door policy with India, huh? That was the term. I was actually just thinking about that.
yeah. So basically, they want to rope in each and every country which is kind of neutral towards their side, another bloc. But that's not going to happen. If you got NATO, then you got SCO, you got BRICS, you got all these alignments also there.
Indeed, there's just so many. Uh, Jagpreet Saab says these are just comments, sir. Russia has recently tested the Jackal drone, which can fire missiles and even drop bombs on tanks. So it seems they are updating their arsenal with the latest technology.
Yes, of course. I mean, you see these drones carrying armed drones, prove themselves to be most effective in Azerbaijan.
Yeah,
So they were the ones who were tested there, and it is only when the effects of that were felt. Wow, they're so effective. This entire thing kind of
exploded, sir. Mm.
exploded. So the Russians also would have caught on to this, and yes, you see the beauty of these drones is they're small. They're not detected so easily until unless it's a swarm. Swarm means about 100 odd drones going together. If a single one odd drone is going through, it's not going to get detected in the radar because of the height. So now, actually, we guys also along the international border with Pakistan, uh, they are using a lot of drones for dropping weapons and smuggling and things like that. Even across the Mexican fence, you know, these drones are being used. But these are all commercial drones.
Hmm.
So the weapon grade drones, which have come into play, are extremely effective. And you have all these. They fitted with some fantastic cameras, and they are used to pinpoint targets that they can go in, sneak in without being noticed, and destroy tanks. Right. So this kind of anybody would. We are also improving on it. Every country is now getting into that.
And the last one, sir. Ishan, thanks so much. He says, what is your opinion on the Global Peace Commission that the President of Mexico proposed with our Prime Minister Modi as its head to ensure a 5 year global truce? I think the Mexican president, before you answer this, has really got something against the US. Huh? He's out to get them every day. Ta, 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 ta.
That now Mexico and they even talking about somewhere people are getting against the Mexicans so badly that they say that America should actually wage a war against Mexico and sort out Mexico once and for all. So this kind of thing is happening, and my old man who's 90 years old, he about a year back, he says I want to write a piece. He writes once in a while. He said I want to write a piece uh, in which I'm going to propose that today's world should be borderless. He says what there should be so much of peace that anybody should be able to travel anywhere. And I thought that is a weird kind of a thought coming from an old man. But this is what is being kind of spoken about a global peace commission that you have ceasefire 5 years. My old man also said the same thing. He says let's have a ceasefire all across, no fighting, no weapon production, freeze, focus on humanity, focus on building each other. So this kind of an idea which has been mooted, I think it's a wonderful idea. And as I said, that statement Vishwa Guru. So the world is looking up at our prime minister, and that is something which is we should be proud of. And I think it would be a wonderful idea if this something like this happens. 5 years, truce, no war, nowhere, sort out differences, try and build each other, and live a great life. Quite possibly.
Interesting. Interesting, sir. It's a, as I said at the beginning of the episode, Ukraine war doesn't fail to astound us and astonish us every week. It gives us a lot to talk about. And trust you me, we can't go through the entire week's events in this 1 hour, 1 hour, 15-minute talk every week that we do. Because the amount of stuff that actually happens is insane. Uh, this war is heating up, that's for sure. As the temperature goes up, the battlefield will also get heated up. And where it actually lands to is something that we will know, and General Sir will be able to help us interpret and make us understand in the future as well. Sir, firstly, thank you so much for specially helping us understand the tactical nuances of a counteroffensive, because that's something that a lot of us won't know. We I had somebody on the show some time ago who was mentioning about this counteroffensive and this and that. I wonder what will actually happen to it, but the the logic of it has been very clearly explained by you, and that's something which is very interesting to me personally. I am going to actually try and do a little further research because it's kind of tingled a little fancy somewhere. So thank you so much for that, sir.
You're
And as
welcome.
always, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Looking forward for the next one next week. Till then, sir. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adi. Thank you for having me on the show. I hope it was worthwhile for the viewers. Thank you
Absolutely,
for
sir.
listening
There
in.
are comments coming in saying thank you both of you. It was a informative show.
Thank you.
Thank you, General Sir, for taking your time. Thanks, Adi. Have a pleasant evening, everyone.
Thank you. You take care, you guys.
Thank you, sir. Bye bye.